What's happening, YouTube? The Calamity here. The second installment of the C# tutorials. And this one is going to be an introduction to variables. Variables are, of course, pretty much the main stage, really, of programming. It's very centralized around variables. And if you've been watching the first tutorial, you'll know that you did input-output, which is this program right here, the Hello World application. So what are variables? They're essentially memory locations, for the technical people. And for those of you who don't really understand what that means, it's basically a container that contains a value, whether that would be null, or if you assign it something. Yeah, it's a different story. But basically, it's a container of a data type, such as a string or an integer, so text or numbers, or other stuff, that you assign it, or not. So, for the starters, we'll use a string, so just write string, and then probably name, and we'll get the compiler to remember your name. So be like, hello, what is your name? And you'll be like, name equals console.readline. Same thing, you know, the readline waits for user response, so from the keyboard, and the name, whatever you type in, will be stored in this variable. So it's like, hello, what is your name? My name is Calamity, and then it will get stored. And then you can display it to the screen. Hello. And then you do a plus sign to display it, because you've finished a string of text, which is this, and you need to add in the variable. And then if you want to add anything else, you just add another plus sign, basically. Hello. Nice to meet you. And notice, you don't really have to do this, but it kind of makes sense to add the space here, and add the space here. Because basically if you don't, your name will be right next to the comma, and then the starting of the next sentence will be right next to the name. So you want to actually give it some space. I'll show you. Oh, Calamity, nice to meet you. If you got rid of the spaces, these spaces wouldn't be here. It doesn't do it automatically, because computers don't actually know how. So that's basically it for strings. It's a very brief introduction to variables, that. But we can go in deeper, a bit more complex. Not really that complex, but for the integer. And what we're going to do is have a list of variables now. So you would have age, old age. Variables are separated by a comma, which is pretty self-explanatory. And we'll have age calc, and one more string, which will be input age, like that. Okay, it underlines with green because you've declared a variable, which is what we're doing here, but we haven't used it. And see, this one, we've used it. So if you get this green line, don't think that it's not going to work, because it will work. You just have variables that haven't been declared. Okay, so do another output. This time, how old are you? And same process, input age equals console.readline. Oh, nice. That's awesome. Exactly the same thing. But now we're going to do something a little different, which is doing some calculation. So the screen can display, oh, you're so many years away from this value or whatever. So for old age, see how we haven't assigned a single value to any of these. Old age we're going to, and you do that by just pressing the equal sign and then giving it a value. So 65 in this case. And then, in order to do a calculation, you have to convert the string to an integer. Integers obviously are whole numbers, and strings are strings of text, and you can't do a calculation with a string. It just doesn't work. It's impossible. Ready. So, two main ways to do that. We type in age equals. The first way is the really basic way, which is convert.to integer 32, and then you just put the string that you wish to convert, which does work. You know, there's nothing really against it, but it's quite sloppy and it looks very basic. So we comment this out. It does work, but a better way of doing it is parsing, which is spelled parsing. If we do age again, integer dot parse, and then you just put the string in. It pretty much looks exactly the same, but this looks neater and it's faster and less time consuming, a lot better, because it passes through the string one by one and then converts it all, rather than putting it into a 32-bit integer, you know, because you might not always be working with 32-bit numbers or 16-bit, you know. It's a lot quicker, easier, more powerful to use parse than it is to use convert.to integer. It just looks very sloppy. Okay, so now we've converted the string to the integer. If we type in like, oh, how old are you? 20. That will be converted, and the age would now have the value of 20, which is useful for us, because now we need to do a calculation to determine how many years away you are from 65 or whatever. So, age calc equals age minus age. Boom. You are ta-da, age calc. Years away from. Let's do that, I guess. It's always end with a read line, so it doesn't close unexpectedly. What is your name? Calamity. Hello, Calamity. Nice to meet you. Hello. How old are you? 25. Oh, nice. 25? That's awesome. You are 40 years away from 65. Easy. Also, you know, it would sort of go crazy right now if we do this. Hello, nice to meet you. How old are you? 66. Oh, you're minus 1 years away from 65. You know, it doesn't really work, really. But we will cover if statements and error handling and exceptions in a later stage. But for now, this tutorial is literally just an introduction to variables. And as you can see, you are doing pretty well. Age and old age and age calc together form an equation, which is this. So we've learned how to store data in a variable using the readline function. We've learned how to display that variable to the screen, in this case maybe your name or your age. We've learned two ways on how to convert the string to an integer for calculations, etc. Then we've learned how to actually do the calculation and then display the result. Pretty basic. You will get the hang of it eventually. if you don't get the hang of it straight away. But the cleanest way to do this is to declare your variables up the top here. You can, for example, create them on the fly. So names, equals console.readline, etc. But it can get quite messy, especially if you're making this code in a team and you need to give it to someone else. They're going to read your code and have to figure out, oh well, this variable's here, etc. And it helps to comment your code as well. See how I've done down here with this. If you're giving your program to someone else, it's best to code it, comment it, and say, oh, this is the equation, for such and such. So that's basically it for variables. Stay tuned for the third installment, which probably be arrays, maybe if statements, probably an if statement, I guess. Well, it depends what you want, really. But stay tuned, comment, rate, subscribe on what you feel, or if you have any questions about anything, I am happy to answer them. But for now, just keep practicing, and you get the hang of it eventually. Yes!